If you've been playing drums a while or you play double bass a lot, um, then you probably already know what a hi-hat drop clutch is. For anyone who doesn't, a drop clutch is a device that mounts to the top of your hi-hat stand and has a little lever on it. And when you hit that lever, it drops the hi-hat onto the bottom hi-hat and the two just rest together. That lets you not have to hold down the hi-hats with your foot. You get a partially open sound or partially closed sound while you play double bass using both of your feet. With edrums, it's a little bit different. If you have a hi-hat controller that's mounted on your stand, then it uses variable resistance and pressure from the top hat to determine how closed it is. So every time you hit it, it actually shifts the hi-hat up and down a little bit. It just sounds really terrible. It makes it hard to play a consistent, partially open sound. And of course, if you have a foot controller that is not mounted to your hi-hat stand, then moving the hi-hat pad makes no difference whatsoever. So a drop clutch definitely doesn't work in that scenario. So what I did is I made a box, working off the idea that most variable hi-hat controllers that are not just an on-off switch, will use variable resistance to determine how open or closed you're holding the hi-hats with your foot when you play. So based on that, I made this box that lets me control that directly without using the hi-hat controller. So all this is I have two 1/4-inch mono jacks, a potentiometer, which I'm using as a variable resistor, and a switch. And the way this works is that you plug a cable from your hi-hat controller, your normal hi-hat controller, whether it's stand mounted or foot mounted, you would plug your cord from that. Instead of plugging it into the controller input on your module, you would plug it into one of these jacks. And then from the other jack, you would run a separate cord out and into the controller input on your module. What this does is it lets you select whether to use your normal hi-hat controller with your foot. When you push the switch, it tells it to not use the normal hi-hat controller and instead use this potentiometer to tell it how open or closed the hi-hats are. That way you can set it to whatever level of, you can set it to completely closed or 1/4 open, half open, 3/4 open, or full open. And it depends on the potentiometer you use too. Okay, so opened up. All there is, two jacks, one potentiometer, and one A-B foot switch, not an on-off foot switch. It needs to be an A-B because we're basically selecting between two different circuits. This is a 100,000 ohm potentiometer. I think 50,000 ohms is the actual resistance on the controller for the strike hi-hats. I used a 100,000 just to give me more headroom. This is the input jack where I'm going to connect the cable from the original hi-hat controller. The positive goes to this side and the negative comes over to this side. The potentiometer, a potentiometer normally has 3 connections on it, and for what we're doing we only need 2. The center of my potentiometer is going to go here, and you can use either of the other 2 legs depending on whether you want to turn the knob clockwise to open or counterclockwise to open. They'll both do the same thing. It just determines which direction turning the knob makes the action that you want. So I chose to use the far right leg under there, which comes back around and goes into the last input. So I have basically 2 different sets of inputs. I have these 2 wires over here connect back around to my original hi-hat controller, which is still mounted on my stand, or it would go into a cord into your hi-hat pedal if you have a pedal controller. And then these two go to the potentiometer. And the two center connections run into this third jack or this second jack over here. That's just my output. If I step on the foot switch, it'll select to connect these two to the center, which goes to my output. If I push the switch a second time, then it will switch to these outside terminals connected to the center. The center terminals are my outputs. So this basically just switches whether I want to use the foot controller or the knob to control the hi-hats. So I designed this to have the knob and the jacks on the side because my plan was I would put this next to my hi-hat pedal, and that way I could reach over and stomp it while I'm playing if I wanted to. I didn't want to have the knob or the jacks on top where I could step on them, so all that sticks out the side. It's dead simple. It's passive, 100% passive. There's no batteries, no fancy circuitry. It's very, very simple, and I think the whole thing was under $30 to make. I'll find the parts and I'll put a parts list on my site, and I'll put a link to that in the description. So if you decide to build this, good luck, and thanks for watching.